Good evening and welcome to the Open Range Records Roundup. I'm joined tonight by Representative Ann Lucas. Ann, welcome to the show.
Hi, David. What a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm glad we could finally make it. Glad we got out in time. And of course, one of our journalists, Don Marcourt. Don, welcome back to the show.
Good evening.
There's a lot happening. It's only, day 6 of the legislative session. And we got into the budget, and today we finally got into debating some of the bills on the floor. And so tonight, I thought what we would do is talk a little bit of education. Maybe we can educate ourselves. But let's start with one of the bills that Representative Lucas has been working on for, 2 years now, right?
Easily.
And that is talking about all these porn books that are in libraries. So first, Anne, why don't you just take a minute or two, tell our audience about yourself, and then we'll talk about the legislation.
Well, I am at the very beginning of my second session, so I'm halfway through my first term in the House. I am a retired banker, so I know the number stuff really, really well. But, about 5 years ago, COVID was going on, and I attended a school board meeting because they were protesting masks. And I'm thinking, how stupid is this? We know masks aren't working.
Right.
My husband's a healthcare provider, and I had high school biology, so I knew all of that. And then a mom stood up at the school board meeting and started reading from a book that her child brought home from the school library. And the mom was instantly silenced. And the board chair said, you may not read that at the school board meeting because we live stream to YouTube, and YouTube does not allow language like that. So YouTube had higher standards at that time than our schools did. And I started looking and talking to people and found out that, wow, children have access to a lot of adult level sexual content.
Yeah, well, we had a very similar situation like that in Sheridan. I mean, it almost happened pretty much play by play from what you described.
Exactly.
But in the Sheridan instance, it was a dad that got up, and he was reading from one of these books. And I mean, we published an article this morning on House Bill 10, and we included some of the screenshots. And I have to tell you, I was not a happy camper having to go grab those screenshots and put them into an article, because we're not talking about Huckleberry Finn or Romeo and Juliet. We're talking about things that are extraordinarily graphic.
I know which screenshots you got, and that book is, in my opinion, number one of the top 2 most notorious books. And that
It's
book
called Gender Queer.
Oh, that's the number 2 book.
Okay. Number
It
one,
doesn't matter.
number 2. Come on.
They're bad books. They're really bad books. And that book, incidentally, was written for an adult audience. And the author, about 2 years after the book came out, changed it and said that would be appropriate for teenagers because it was selling so well.
Of course it was.
For teenagers. And our libraries made a decision, oh my gosh, many years ago, more than 10 years ago, to start putting what I consider to be adult level sexual content. And many parents believe me, a lot of community members are on the same side. We all look at this, and if you haven't read any of these books, folks, make a point of it. If you live in Laramie County, give me a call. I'll show you. I have a wonderfully privately curated collection of books, probably second to none in the state. Who knew that this would go on? Anyway,
Right.
So this became my mission, and then, well, we all know what happened in House District 43. It was a bad situation.
Why the little box, Dan?
Yeah, it was really bad. And then, of course, almost exactly on February 15th, 2022, the august body of the Wyoming House of Representatives voted to not pursue an investigation against voter fraud. And that was a real crime. And just last week, we're pursuing an investigation against something that probably wasn't the smartest thing in the world, but it wasn't a crime.
No. Well, the Zwanitzer thing is, it has always fascinated me because, I was one of the people that submitted a complaint, and we had that guy dead to rights. I even had pictures of his empty house from a realtor's website. So, but yeah, the legislature they wouldn't vote to convene an investigation, and they just swept that one under the rug. All right, so I want to stay on this book thing
So, yeah.
because this is a you just debated it tonight, and it's pretty controversial. And so I guess where we ought to start is, why don't you tell us what your bill does?
So this is House Bill 10, and it is actually a Judiciary Committee bill. I ran a bill last session that was a criminal bill, and it did not make it out of the Judiciary Committee, the House Judiciary Committee. They felt like it wasn't ready for prime time or something. But in essence, this bill is very, very similar to the bill that I ran last session. And I have worked with the Judiciary Committee on this bill. I was their prime sponsor. Yeah, I testified to that
Right.
bill several times. I brought the books. I took my show on the road. And so the bill itself requires public libraries and public school libraries to keep books that have been determined to have adult level sexual content out of easy access of minors.
Okay, so now one of the big misconceptions about this thing is that it takes books out of the library. Is that true?
It does not take books out of the public library. It could be argued that it takes books out of the school libraries because most school libraries do not provide books for adults. There are no adult libraries in our public
Right.
schools. So those are children's libraries. So children's libraries should never have books with adult level sexual content.
Well, and I love the argument that why is it that we don't, and they kind of brought it up on the floor tonight, but why is it that you don't have a collection of, say, penthouse letters in a library? Well, I mean, we could argue that there may be some historical value to it, in a weird way,
You read it for the articles?
right? But there's no. We lost a picture. What happened here? I don't know what's going on.
Oh, I saw us there. There we are.
There we are. But sorry, folks. I'm gonna have to be Johnny on the spot with the gizmo. All right, so
Uh-oh, we're off.
we're off again.
All right, Don.
There we go.
Keep an eye
All
on us.
right.
I know the answer to that.
So, it's new shows, live TV, you have problems. So anyway, what I was saying was that, we could argue that those things have some sort of historical value. Maybe. There's rarely were there pictures in them, but the question is, why don't you have those in a library? And the answer to that is, it's pornography.
Well, the Supreme Court decided that obscenity is whatever the typical adult community member finds to be offensive. And that is part of what's called the Miller test.
Right.
And the Miller test, though, doesn't gauge what is offensive to children because, honestly, the Supreme Court never figured out that they would need to do that. Back when the Miller test came out, in what was that, the 50s, early 60s? Don't test me, folks. I'm tired. I've been doing this kind of junk all day.
Right.
But
There we go.
they never figured that they would have to determine what is obscene for children.
Right.
And so the Miller test just flat out doesn't apply to kids. But magazines like Hustler, Playboy, the nudie magazines are adult sexual content. And most people in the community find that kind of stuff offensive. And so it's been determined that's pornographic, that's obscenity. Larry Flint
Right.
had some issues with all of that. But so you don't find those in the library, the public library, even in the adult section.
Right. Well, and I love the other argument I love is, why is it when you go to a gas station, are the dirty magazines behind the counter, and why are they covered in black plastic?
Yeah.
It's because every community in the country has an obscenity statute. Now, what would you say about all of the arguments? What would you say to all of the arguments surrounding free speech, that all of this is free speech, and how dare you infringe on a parent's right to decide what is best for their child.
Well, I have a lot to say, of course. So
I thought you
just
might.
cut me off when I just keep going. First off, the laws as we have them written right now do not put parents in charge of these decisions. Government employees in the form of public library employees and public school librarians and teachers have absolute ability to do this. Give children, offer children books containing adult level sexual content. I had to train myself to say that instead of nasty pictures and pornography, because those all have specific
Sure.
definitions. So what we're doing with this bill is telling the government, you may not show these books, give these books to children. Only parents can do that. And so these books then must be shelved. This is a reshelving thing, folks. This is all it is. This is not banning one single book, is telling the libraries you must put these books in the adult section of the library. And children who want to read this need to get their parents to check the books out at the library.
Right.
If you think your 16-year-old daughter is mature enough to read A Handmaid's Tale, and you think that that's appropriate content for her, then you go to the library and you check it out for her. If you don't want to hassle with the library, then order it from Thrift Books or Amazon, or go to Barnes & Noble or wherever. But those books are freely available. They may
Okay.
not be free, but they're available for you. So therefore, they are not banned.
Well, no, and I think the very phrase of, we're banning books, I think it's ridiculous, because
course.
you can go to Amazon, you can order it. Generally speaking, you can go to the public library and get it.
Absolutely.
But there's just some books that I remember when I was in high school that, I like to read Stephen King books. And while
Me
there
too.
were a couple of Stephen King books in the high school library, there wasn't the whole collection. Now, if you went to the public library, well, they were all there. And I think that there is an interesting argument to be made, and there's several different types of cases where the Supreme Court has ruled in this way, that students in a school are not in possession of their full complement of constitutional rights. A good example of that one is the lockers. So because kids put their book bag in a locker, which is school property, the Fourth Amendment really doesn't apply.
Sure.
And then you add on top of it all of our laws that we have concerning, the purchase of tobacco. In Wyoming, you have to be 21.
Tattoos.
Tattoos. There's rated R movies, though I don't know that any theater really checks that anymore.
They do.
They do?
Yeah, they do. And NC-17 movies. And interestingly, the Motion Picture Academy voluntarily does that. The law does not require that because they do such a good job of policing themselves on the ratings.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So we learn something new every day.
I have learned too much.
All right.
Who
Well,
knew?
so one of the fascinating comments I heard from the floor was from Representative Jarvis, and she said, and I'm sure she misspoke. I would hope so. But anyway, she said, "Well, if you're going to have a copy of a Bible in the school, then you have to have the other Bibles from the other religions." Far as I know, there's only one Bible. And the great thing, and you guys don't get to see this when you're on the floor, but the looks that you get from other people sitting in the gallery, it's wonderfully fun sometimes, because you look over and everybody's like, what was that?
You don't get to see the looks on the floor when those kinds of things happen too, because I'm just looking over at Scott Smith, who sits next to me going, Lee Filer said that in committee back in last session, that if we remove these books from the school libraries and the public libraries, that we have to take the Bibles out because there's prurient sex in the Bibles. And I own several Bibles, different
Sure.
prints, King James, Old King James, New King James, Modern Language, Schofield Bible, so on. And none of them have graphic sex.
No.
It says lot laid with.
Sure.
And you just figure it out what that meant because it didn't tell you.
Well, and that's the difference, right? So we've heard that argument. I think last year when I don't remember which committee your bill went to, but
Judiciary.
so the president of Sheridan College, Walter Tribely, he made that argument. Well, there's dirty stuff in the Bible too. Well, if you look at the article on the Open Range Record about House Bill 10, there are two screenshots in that article. You can go look at them, and you can decide for yourself whether or not what you see and read on those screenshots is in any way comparable.
I haven't seen anything like that in the Bible.
No,
And
no.
I've read the whole Bible.
Good for
Yeah, I
you.
know, right? Yeah, there's no good sex in the Bible, okay?
All right. So where is your bill at in the process, and what has to happen next?
So today it passed first reading, and it was arduous.
It's a long debate.
It was a very long debate. It was kind of a lot of fun. I had a good bit of fun, and I got in a little bit of trouble for saying a word on the floor that wasn't nasty, folks, but it was a word from one of the books that you're not allowed to say that word on the House floor, though.
Which is wonderfully ironic.
It's just like the school board meetings.
Right.
You can't say that on the House floor.
So before anybody asks, did you do that on purpose, or were you just going through your argument?
I was going through my argument, but also I was just trying to illustrate what the kind of content is in these books. Folks, you think you know what we're talking about, but if you haven't looked at these books with your own eyes, I'll tell you, when I took these books to the very first Joint Judiciary Committee meeting this summer, and I brought my bags of books, and my husband was distributing them to the committee members, and I watched one of the chairs open up one of the books, and it happened to be genderqueer, by the way, and he opened the book up and he went, and then he talked to me later, and he has children, and he said, I never knew it was that bad.
Well, that's because they never do their homework.
Well, who knew?
Who knew? All right, so that pretty much covers House Bill 10, I think. Now, there were a number of things, and before we go any further, since we had a little camera issue, let me make sure I can get Dawn.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
There's Dawn.
We can get Dawn in the
I'm
picture, but
here.
your camera is that one right there.
Right
Okay.
there?
There you
Okay.
go. All right, so anyway, a couple of the other topics we wanted to talk about this evening is House Bill 11. And what that is it had a couple of amendments on it for Sheridan College. And, I happen to live in Sheridan, and I graduated from Sheridan College. And I can tell you that Ken, Representative Pendergraft, was absolutely correct when he was describing the science building there. It's in really rough shape. It's really terrible. It was in rough shape when I was in school, and it's not changed. So I guess first question to you, Ann, what was your feeling on those amendments? How did you vote? Give it to me.
First off, we just really have to be serious about curbing the growth of government. It grows, the budget grows incrementally every single year. And Don Edwards, he's the budget god at LSO.
Don Richards.
Richards, sorry. I said Edwards, yeah. Long day, folks. Don says in less than 4 years, 42 months, we're going to have some serious financial issues if we don't stop spending more.
Okay.
Now, I'm not saying that we have to go on a strict diet and spend nothing. We're not really Club No.
You got the pin.
I do. I have a lot of pins, though. But the thing of it is that we've got to get serious on not spending more.
Okay.
So what we have been doing, many of us in the legislature have been looking at the budget requests and reducing the amount of the ask. Mm-hmm. Not reducing the amount of money that they get right now. That did happen a little bit, but not very much. And so this is one of those things. Yes, we know that we have some buildings that need serious work on them. But if we're going to get serious about this and keep something disastrous from happening in less than 4 years. 4 years goes by really fast, folks. Maybe we just need to make do for a while.
Okay, so you weren't persuaded by Representative Pendergraft's argument to take money from the University of Wyoming and put it over here.
It's really hard for me, of course, to contradict Representative Pendergraft.
It's easy. Once you just let him be your show producer, and
Yeah,
it's
I
fine.
guess. But he's one of my mentors, and I just appreciate him so much. But I understand, too, he lives in Sheridan. I do not. And so the
We
folks
can make the same argument about LCCC.
and I didn't vote for that one either. And I know that Dr. Schaefer will not be happy with me.
No, there you go. Just losing voters left and right.
Well,
Voting like
I
a
don't think he
conservative.
can
That's
vote
what we
for me
do.
either, even though LCCC is in my house district. He doesn't live there. But no, we just have to be serious on this and say, is this a must-have right now?
Okay, now that's a different point, I think. Now I wanted Dawn to step in on this conversation because one of the great community colleges in Wyoming is
Western Wyoming Community College in Rock Springs.
yeah. So why don't you talk to us about that?
Okay, well, I'm an alumni from there. So, anyways, here probably when my son was in high school, I'd say about 6 years ago, they said that Western Wyoming was one of the top 25 community colleges in the United States. So they were kind of pushing kids to go there. They have a lot of great programs, a lot of tech programs, and they are just started a nuclear program to kind of try to fill in for TerraPower to help train people to go to work for TerraPower in Kemmer. They did that with their automation and stuff programs back when I went to Western. That was like 40 years ago. But
Well, it was
anyways,
25 when I went to Sheridan. I get it.
anyways, they helped out a lot training people to get jobs for Exxon at Chute Creek and at Black Canyon. So, I mean, these are the colleges that are going to train our kids in the future more than I think the University of Wyoming is going to be. So I agree that they should take the money from UW and stick it into the community colleges and make those programs better.
All right, so that's where I wanted to take the conversation because the Appropriations Committee cut a pretty good chunk out of. Well, for me, it's a big chunk of money. For the university, it's a really small percentage. But what was it, like $60 million they cut from the university?
40 million plus.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to add it all up. The number 66 in my head. But anyway, ever since I've been watching the legislature, and you've been in there a lot, all these years too.
Yeah.
As a citizen and now as a legislator. But like every year, it was let's dump 100 million here, let's dump 70 million there, 170 million here. Oh, we need more at the stadium, and it was hundreds of millions of dollars that we dumped into the university, and it is a beautiful school. But then, what about all of these other institutions that we have? That I mean, they got smaller class sizes, closer to home, more tech-centered type education.
CTE.
CTE. So what is there any impetus in the legislature to maybe tail off on the university and start supporting some of these other smaller schools?
Depends who you ask.
Okay, I'm asking you.
I think that, well, I sent 2 kids to the University of Wyoming, okay? Both of my girls went to University of Wyoming. And so it's not that we don't like them, because I love them. But I don't think that they have gotten to the point where they understand the people of Wyoming. We don't want to send our kids to a woke school. And it's gotten woker and woker and woker, and we're paying a lot of money for this. Folks don't realize that the University of Wyoming has nearly $1 billion in their endowment. It's 900 million, okay? That's
It's
a lot of
huge
money.
amount of money.
And
for
so
a Wyoming school, a state with
it is-
580,000
It
people.
is a very large amount of money in the endowment, and yet they're what I think of as almost nickel and diming us on this. What's $40 million? when we can take that 40 million and push it over somewhere else where perhaps a young person will get a really useful education rather than a degree in gender studies. I'm being facetious, folks. I get it. But
No, they did away with that major. Now you can only minor in gender studies.
it's true.
But
Yes.
I think that there's that Wyoming has done a great job with smaller community colleges, and we could debate the the effectiveness of federal student loans, and I mean we could go down that rabbit hole. But I think where I'd like to stay in the conversation is that if you want a good technical education, well, I mean you can go to, if you want to go to the welding school in Sheridan, or if you want to go to study agriculture at Torrington. I mean, in Powell. I mean, there's a lot of great schools, and I just haven't seen a lot of willingness to fund our community colleges as opposed to the university.
It's a real tough one. I agree with you. Also, we have a lot of high school students who go to the community colleges concurrently, and the community colleges really don't get paid for that.
Oh, they don't? I thought there was something you had
No,
to
there's
pay there.
something that I had a meeting with Joe Schaefer not very long ago, and he was explaining this to me. Now, of course, they all offer it, but and it's not 10,000 students, so it's not a huge burden, but it does come out of their overhead, and that would be something I think worth looking at some point. Right now, though, we're looking at trimming
Okay.
the ask.
All right,
Trimming
so
the
let's
ask.
let's talk about some more things that we could probably. Let's see here. We've got a number of things on. Let's talk about House Bill 103. Okay, House Bill 103 was the First Amendment Protection Act. It's the anti-SLAPP law.
Yes.
And what a SLAPP lawsuit is it's called a strategic lawsuit against public participation. And so what happens in a SLAPP lawsuit is, a company or a government agency, some of them do it too, they start receiving criticism from a member of the public. And whether it's through, articles that are published or letters to the editor, Facebook posts, or
Speeches.
or what have you. And they file a completely frivolous lawsuit, and the whole point is not to win the lawsuit, it's to shut the other person up, because you have to hire a lawyer. And so this piece of legislation would prohibit and give a course of action for these SLAPP lawsuits. So, Ann, what was the discussion on the floor? I know House, there's so many bills, but if you can recall.
No, I do. This bill, incidentally, we ran last year, and it was not successful. It passed through the House overwhelmingly, but didn't make it through the Senate.
Weird.
Yeah, that happens sometimes, doesn't it? And so far it is doing well in the House. It is going to committee. It didn't today, I don't think.
No, I don't think so. I think it's on general file.
Yeah. Oh, okay. It is a great bill, and there's a lot of public appetite for it. Folks are tired of this never-ending stream of lawsuits, and literally people are concerned that they are afraid of speaking in public sometimes for fear that a local celebrity of some kind is going to take offense and then sue them for really nothing. And a lot of these folks are public figures.
Yes.
And that is just surprising to me that they can even do that. But there it is.
Well,
and
it's a dramatic reversal, because in law, if you're, I guess to some degree it's still this way, but it used to be that if you're a public figure, if you're an elected official, or a member of the media like myself, or you're a columnist, or you're a TV host, or whatever, the bar for defamation has always been much higher than it is for a private citizen, because
has to be malicious.
yeah, it has to be malicious, and it has to be absolutely not true, and you would have had to prove that there was some sort of damage there. some pecuniary damage. Well, things have kind of flip flopped on that because now you got public officials filing lawsuits against somebody who made a comment on Facebook,
Yep.
Yep.
you're bankrupt. I mean, it bankrupts families, and so do you. And I know it's not your bill, but do you remember kind of the specifics of it, or
So the bill is being run by Representative Ottman, Pepper
Pepper?
Ottman, and she ran it last session as well. Um, I think that this bill will do well. It did well last session, though. And I think it'll do well in committee. It'll do well when it's back to the floor now, I believe. I get a little fuzzy on that because it's overwhelming. There's so much going on at once. But it'll do well on the floor. I think that this bill is going to pass the House. And then, folks, we just need to watch the Senate. And the Senate needs to pick this bill up. This is a good bill. Folks like this bill. Everybody likes this bill.
Well, and another one that is kind of related was the public records bill, and that one didn't make it. And I don't even think it got introduced.
Didn't.
But that one was brought by Representative Brady, and it would have put limits on how much government agencies could charge for public records requests. And I've heard of cases where a government agency wanted to charge thousands of dollars to somebody just requesting something that they've already paid for, a public record.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think there is a real appetite for transparency legislation, for restraining government, and to your credit, a lot of that is done by the purse strings, and that's why we have the House.
Yeah, that bill, well, public records request has been a topical thing for a couple of years now. I was on the public records request task force during this interim, which accomplished absolutely nothing. I'm not a really big fan of task forces, folks. If you don't have like clear-cut goals and clear-cut ideas and you write things down and then you report
Right.
to the public, things don't get done. It is one of those where some political subdivisions, government entities, will just explode the cost of a records request. I've heard it happen. I had people send me their requests and tell me what happened. And we had a family in Rock Springs ask for a curriculum.
Okay, should be pretty easy to.
And they're
provide that.
entitled to that. They're the parent. They should be able to get that. And they were quoted something like $5,000.
Whoa!
Yeah, it was crazy, and it was going to take like, I'm going to make up an amount of time. It was going to take like a month or something insane
God.
for that. And what happens is a lot of times I think that the government, and I'm not saying that government in particular because many of them do it, is they'll come up with an astronomical cost because they know that most people aren't
don't
going to
have
be
it.
able
Yep.
to pay it. And so that just keeps people from asking for stuff. But this is our government. Aren't we supposed to be able to see what our government is doing?
Nope.
My judiciary transparency bill would have required that you could sit at home on the internet, because we've had the internet now for how long?
Forever.
Yeah, and you could look up court cases. And that just crashed and burned because we had to have
Let's talk about-
2/3.
Let's talk about that for a minute.
It'll be
because,
back next session.
Because being a journalist, I occasionally I go to the courthouse and pull court records, and it's okay. I get it. They have to make money, but really, 50 cents a page. And in a court file, sometimes you're not talking like 4 or 5 pages. You might be talking 50 pages.
You might be talking 10,000 pages.
Right.
I
And-
went there for a 10,000 page.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I've already paid for that.
Kind of. Also, too, the judicial system, that's our third branch of government. And if the legislature is transparent and we have to be on YouTube all the time and tell you what we're doing and we want to do this, and the executive branch is transparent, why is the judicial branch not so transparent? There are going to be things that we are not entitled to know.
Sure.
Cases that involve children, cases that have very sensitive information where if it's leaked, it could pose a danger to somebody. But otherwise, this is public information. You can get it. You just have to go to the courthouse. I don't know how it is in your area.
You gotta go to
I
their little
live,
computer
I
and-
live in Cheyenne. You have to leave your phone in your car, leave your laptop in your car, and then look through your purse real quick in case you have any metal, because you have to go through a metal detector. I wear a hand brace a lot of times, and that was flipping them out going there. And then you can only have pages printed unless you feel like taking notes on a 10,000 page case. Yeah, I'm not going to do that, but
That's
I can't pay
ridiculous.
for it either because that's $5,000.
Well, and it doesn't make any sense that you can't sit at home on your computer and go to a web page, which is exactly what it is when you go look up a court case.
And those cases are already scanned, because in order for a law firm to give a case to the court, they have to scan it and upload it. So all they're literally having to do is index it and put it on a website. So it's not rocket science. We've had the internet for a long time, but this branch does not want people to see. Oh, here's one more thing. Sorry, I'll stop in
go
a
right
minute.
ahead.
Is judges come up for retention on the ballot. Shall judge thus and so be retained? And most people go, I don't know.
Not me. I always vote no.
Well, you and I are the same on this. I only know one person who actually goes to the courthouse and looks up judges and reads their decisions. That is the only way you can find out how a judge is doing. And yet we put them on the ballot and we give people no easy way to make a decision. So, folks, just say no. Just say no.
Yeah.
Every single judge, no.
Well, and that's the only, in Wyoming, and I've covered this a lot on my program, and actually it was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court that, she didn't mention my show by name, but I was who she was referring to. But I've been very critical of the Judicial Selection Committee, or our whole method, because it's the governor pretty much all the way around. And then the only time we get a say into the judges is when they run for retention. And, it's like you said, Anne, most people don't pay attention to that.
They don't.
So I want to move to maybe another bill that did come up this evening. Carly Provenza's corner crossing bill. So we haven't talked too much to Dawn. Dawn, I'll let you start, and hopefully we still have this camera. All right, so here we go.
Can you see me?
Yeah, we got you.
So the whole idea of the bill is to kind of protect people who do the corner crossing from public land to public land when they're like in the checkerboard.
Right.
So anyway, I think that it's a good bill. It's a good start. But like when we were talking, I think the other night about, once they go from being on foot to maybe taking a four-wheeler and then taking down gates and making a two-track and stuff, that's kind of the problem that I think the private landowners have that really we need to be cognizant of.
Yeah.
So there's got to be another way to do this. At some point, I think easements are going to have to be offered to get from public land sections through private land sections, but I can also see the landowners, private property deal too. So
Yeah. Okay. So this was a big debate on the floor, and so Anne, first, I guess let's just get your opinion of, let's see here, what was it? House Bill 19. And then we'll kind of talk around about it. So what's your thoughts on it?
I will say that, city girl, never encountered this type of issue when I grew up in Chicago.
No, not a lot of public land there.
No, and there's just no checkerboards or, issues. Everybody walks everywhere they want, I guess. I don't
Right.
know. I thought the bill was a pretty good bill. I think it's a good start. I will say, though, that Representative Provenza had some good questions. She had some really lucid arguments on that, and I think it's worth thinking about. I voted for it. We're going to debate it some more. It's not a done deal yet. And I think this might be something that, because it is such a big topic, that maybe we need to just hammer at that one and fix it during the interim. I don't know.
Well, it's such a difficult subject.
It is.
It is not. I mean, I guess to folks who really haven't looked into it, it sounds simple. So there's this corner of public land. It's public land here. It's public land here. We should be able to walk across there, and it's like playing checkers. You're not touching the other person's property. Well, where you run into problems with that is unless you're a surveyor, you have no idea where you're standing. And I think it was Representative Worf who said, your little GPS or your phone,
Right.
whichever you're using, is accurate to about 3 meters. And so that's 9 feet
Yeah.
in any direction. And so you don't know where you're standing. And for me, I understand that this is a difficult subject, but for me, it's a property rights issue.
Right.
That I don't think that we need to, and the 10th Circuit has already ruled that it's okay. But for me, I think there's no way that you're going to get around trespassing. It is going to happen. And whether you intend to or not, I think that's kind of immaterial because the trespassing is going to happen.
And when that happens, then property owners are deprived
Yeah.
of the use of their property. And they're told what they can and cannot do with their property. I always disagree with that. People always get upset over data centers, but it's very hard to tell people what you can and cannot do with your own property.
Well, and if we're
Sometimes.
yeah, if we're people that value property rights, there are a number of things that are happening across the state. Corner crossing is just one of those, to where we're telling people, what they can and can't do on their own property. My opinion is, if you own a piece of property, you can put up any sign you want. You could put up a sign that said "cops are terrible." Now, probably not a wise thing for you to do because you'll probably be getting a ticket later. But it's your property, and you ought to be able to manage it however you see fit. But this 10th Circuit ruling, to me, it tells landowners what they can and can't do with their own property. Now they have to let somebody potentially trespass. I don't know. I think it's a
I
difficult
think
subject.
one of the good arguments tonight was about if you go and you get an elk and you're packing an elk out, how you're not going to be able to stay in that little section to get that elk back over the fence and pack it out. So, I mean, there was some good points made, and that's the things that are going to have to be worked out.
The most persuasive argument that I've heard was from a rancher. He used to be in the legislature, Richard Tass, and he told me, well, first, there's no way that you can determine where you're at. Okay, so unless you're a surveyor and have a $100,000 piece of equipment, I don't know if that's the exact number, but unless you have a survey grade GPS, you don't know. And so first, it starts out as, okay, we're going to step across this, and then it becomes a ladder, and then it becomes a gate, and then the little tiny trail becomes a 2-track, and then it becomes a 4-track, and all of a sudden there's a giant piece of your property
It's a road.
it's a
Right.
road, and it's destroyed.
Yeah.
And whether you think so or not, it takes a heck of a lot of property to raise one cow. And so, yeah, that little 3 meter square chunk of property is valuable, and on top of it, it's their property anyway.
Absolutely. I found real quick how important it is to close those gates.
Oh, yeah.
Even as a city girl, when I was door knocking during my last campaign, because I have a lot of ranch land in my house district. And yeah, I'm driving my cute little Mini Cooper because the big car was in the shop. And I stop, open the gate, move the car through, get out, close the gate.
Yep.
And those are very important. I had property owners tell me, okay, make sure you close that
close that
gate.
gate.
Yes, sir, I will. And then, of course, the cows come up and want to investigate my mini.
Well, yeah, they thought you were bringing them dinner.
They did.
All right, so last thing, and I think that this is, I think this one's kind of a difficult subject, just because it's hard to get around. But did you see the protest last Friday on the steps on the front of the Capitol?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we published an article about it today, partly about it. It's written by Laura Pavey. It's a great piece. Now, what happened is it was permitted to be an equality rally. And it was not an equality rally. It was an anti-ICE, anti-law enforcement type rally, and most of the people there were kids. There were two legislators that participated, riled the crowd up. That was Carly Provenza and Senator Chris Rothfuss. And the crowd ended up impeding traffic. So a couple of questions for you, Ann. I mean, you live here in Cheyenne. Or,
I do.
You know, kind of on the outskirts, but
Yeah.
still Cheyenne. What was your take on the protest that happened last Friday?
Well, the first thing I want to know is why these kids were even allowed to do this. They were truant from school. And to my knowledge, that when you cut classes, that's not a good thing. I remember as a teenager occasionally cutting a class and getting some accountability for it. And so I was told, though, that most of the schools weren't going to do anything to the kids. I think that one school said that that would be counted as an unexcused absence.
Okay.
Secondly, I was concerned because the behavior of these young people was not really all that great.
No.
I had people tell me that they got sworn at, they got threatened, and the police were basically just kind of watching to make sure that nobody got hurt, physically hurt.
I don't know that that's entirely accurate. We have a video on the Open Range record of a protester. It looked to me to be like a high school kid, maybe a little older, and there's a sheriff's deputy trying to move the crowd out of the road, and the protester, yeah, we'll just call him that, was screaming at the cop, and you can see in the video there isn't any sound to it, but you can see him doing this at the police officer. Now, when it started, there weren't nearly as many cops as it. I mean, quickly they showed up when it looked like the protest might get a little bit out of hand. So, first, what's your take on all this anti-ICE stuff that we're seeing across the country, and now right here in Cheyenne, and the other towns in the state?
Our society has gone the wrong way a long time ago, and it's only getting worse. I think that law enforcement needs to step to not be afraid and to actually take control of dangerous situations. When children are in the road impeding traffic and then screaming obscenities at
Which
people,
they were.
and they were, then something needs to be done. Something needs to be done. I don't think that parents necessarily knew that that was going to happen. Some probably did. Some probably maybe were there with their children. I don't know. But I think that we need to kind of do an about face on this and clearly say some things are not okay. And we've lost sight of that. I've got a lot of family who lives in Minnesota,
Yeah.
and they are afraid to go. And my brother lives in a suburb of Minneapolis, and they don't go to the city, as they call it, because it's
just too dangerous?
It's dangerous.
Well, it's certainly, I think if you had been in the middle of that crowd yesterday or Friday, it could have been dangerous. And I drove by it, snapped some pictures, and then I kind of looked at it, watched from some windows inside the Capitol.
That's what I did.
And, I took a couple pictures and a couple of videos. But it was, and this is an interesting point to me, and nobody seems to think it's all that important, but the rally was permitted as a equality rally by Sarah Burlingame, who is the head of the LGBT group, Wyoming Equality. Well, it was very clearly not an equality rally. And most of the people there, and I've got several pictures and there's videos. Most of the people there were Hispanic or of Latino descent. So obviously, this protest or rally or whatever it was planned ahead of time, and it was never going to be an equality rally. Not to say that those people wouldn't show up at that rally, but it was predominantly Hispanic. There were Mexican flags everywhere.
Anti-ICE.
Very,
Yeah.
very anti-ICE, anti-law enforcement too. So the question is, all right, so more law enforcement. I mean, is there something legislative that you would think of, or is it mainly a law enforcement problem?
I don't know that we really need more legislation on that. I think that enforcing laws we already have is a good thing, and we are not doing a good job of that nationally now.
No.
And that's how we got into this situation, was by not enforcing immigration laws that we had. And, President Obama deported more people in his terms than President Trump has so far.
Yeah.
And nobody is having heart attacks over that.
Well, and it's I really believe that it is a law enforcement issue, and that absolutely the First Amendment in my mind is sacrosanct. But you can't impede traffic, and you certainly can't threaten other people. And again, I don't have any reports that the protest actually turned violent. But when you've got screaming that can be heard from 3 blocks away, I think the potential was there. And clearly the rally was set up under false pretenses. And so I think there's a lot of questions that need to be asked there, and I don't know what the solution is, except that we got to have law enforcement that'll step in.
And I really question whether minors should be permitted to do those things without parental guidance. Parents, these are your kids. These are
Yeah.
not the government's kids. These are your kids.
And I would encourage everybody to go look at the article on the Open Range Record. You'll see it. It's the main one right in the middle of the page. There are videos in there, and you can see most of the people at this protest were young people, that it was not all that peaceful. I mean, I don't think there was any property damage, but when you're yelling at a cop, I don't consider that to be peaceful. So go look at that, and there's a lot of other articles on the Open Range Record. We published several today. We're doing a really good job, I think, of reporting the news. And thank you very much for watching and for reading the pieces. We're going to continue working hard, and that'll about do it for tonight. Apologize about the little camera snafu. We will do better on future broadcasts. So, Don, I know you can't see you because you're out of the camera right now. But thank you for joining us, and Representative
welcome.
Lucas, I appreciate it. Thank you all very much for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Always a pleasure.
Good night.